Well, good morning, everyone. Really happy to see you here on a Friday morning. Also really happy to welcome Jenny Bombasaro Brady and Sharon Inkelas to our meeting today of the UC Berkeley AI community to learn more about the CERC-AIR subcommittee. So I posted a little link in the chat to the CERC-AIR website. You'll learn more, obviously, throughout today's presentation about the Compliance Enterprise Risk Committee Artificial Intelligence Risk Subcommittee. A little bit of a mouthful, but basically, this is a new resource provided to you here on campus that provides risk assessment and risk mitigation advice to you as a Berkeley user to review proposed new AI tools or new uses of existing tools in your department. So because this is a new resource and many of you are probably thinking about AI tools in your departments, in your programs, you're not sure who to ask if you have a question about whether there's some risk involved. Jenny and Sharon are here to share a resource that is an optional but free and available resource to you to reach out to get some help. So with that, I will pass it on to Sharon and Jenny to take it away. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. All right, I am going to share my screen. Share. And here we go. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to return. We were very lucky to get the opportunity to come speak to the AI community. I believe it was in December. And at that time, we were really just sharing some of the early plans and sort of vision for this committee that we have now fully populated with members and whose work has now begun. So we're happy to share with you a bit of an update. And we'll also, for folks who are new, give you a bit of a recap on sort of the backgrounds that led to the development of this committee and how it approaches its work. So I am Jenny Bombasaro Brady, as Karen said. I'm the IT Policy Program Manager within Berkeley IT. And together with Sharon, who I will allow to introduce herself in a moment, we are going to share this presentation and are sort of spearheading the work of the subcommittee. Sharon?
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Jenny, and hi, everyone. I'm Sharon Inkelas, she, her pronouns, faculty advisor to the Chancellor on Campus Welfare and Deputy Compliance Officer. I'm also a member of PAC-AI, the Provost Advisory Committee on AI, and I recognize, I think, some other members here. And PAC-AI has kind of sponsored this initiative that Jenny and I have embarked on, and it has been so wonderful to work with Jenny, who is such a subject matter expert. And I'm really excited about the work that the subcommittee is doing as sort of a pilot for a future sustainable source of AI risk review for the campus. Back to you, Jenny.
Thanks, Sharon. All right, folks, we'll jump in now. So as Sharon mentioned, this committee was developed at the joint request of CERC, the parent committee, the Compliance Enterprise Risk Committee for Campus, which advises Cabinet, and also the Provost Advisory Council on AI. However, the suggestion to those groups to develop this committee as a resource for review did not come out of nowhere. The UC system has been coordinating on review and communication regarding AI risk for quite some time. There is a UC AI Council that has its own risk subcommittee, and I have been sitting on that committee. The other members of the committee include system-wide leadership and procurement, legal, risk, ethics, IT policy, and other areas. And we gather regularly as a subgroup and about every month as a large committee. And it's been very helpful to understand what other campuses are doing to address AI risk and how they are approaching different models of AI governance and and support for units going through the procurement process and exploring these issues. Last fall, the UC-AI risk subcommittee developed a risk assessment tool. It's largely based on, well, it's based on several pieces of information, but I'd say there's two sort of seminal inputs. One is the, as you'll see on this slide, the UC responsible AI principles, which were developed by the committee back in 2022, and also the National Institute for Standards and Technology, the NIST AI Risk Management Framework. So that's a federal agency, and they developed a tool for use to define and measure risk. So it was sort of a marriage of those two things that led to the creation of, you see in this slide, a little screenshot that shows you the first page of the risk assessment guide. And we have now adapted that item, which is created by the whole UC AI Council, for Berkeley's use. And we've done that together with a committee. Yes, I'm going to move on from this slide because I just spoke a bit about some of the origins. The purpose of the committee is to review new AI tools and use cases to determine whether risk involved is something a unit head can accept. And we have a large number of campus experts in the committee who are helping us to determine the answer to those questions. These folks are not just serving on the committee to review requests as they come in. They have actually been instrumental in reviewing the risk assessment tool itself, revising it from the UC version for Berkeley implementation. And it continues to be a very engaged process where we have first a risk screening tool that is quick, 5 questions, and gets auto-graded. And the respondent to this risk screening is then either told, you know, this is a fairly low risk and you can proceed without further review from the committee, or it suggests you have the option, because this is deemed to be a higher risk use case, to go through the full risk assessment process and have the committee's review. So what occurs is that, assuming an applicant does get reviewed to complete, or does get referred to complete the full risk assessment, Sharon, myself, and a few members of the subcommittee sort of triage and determine, okay, is this a use case that is so similar to others we've reviewed that we can pass on the guidance about risk mitigation, or does this require a sort of unique gathering of information and a further look? So then we discuss within the committee how to proceed, and we in subgroups for various types of tools work on a report, and that written report is an artifact that is then passed on to the unit with guidance. There may be more back and forth than that. It is the case that sometimes the risk assessment tool that the unit completes leaves us with some questions, or the unit has themselves indicated, I don't know, in response to some of the questions. And so we sometimes will have a back and forth where we do some research, we connect with their vendor, also with our fellow offices that are involved in the review process, like the Information Security Office, which has its own security assessments team, the Accessibility Office, and also the Privacy Office. This slide describes to you how requesters find CERC-AIR. So This is a new committee, of course, and we are trying to do some sort of road shows like we're doing right now to let folks know about this resource. We are available in a number of scenarios. So units or departments can come to CERC-AIR for support if they are seeking to utilize an already procured tool or to use a tool in a new use case. So perhaps, for example, you have a tool that suddenly has AI functionality that it didn't before. You know, we're seeing many companies sort of race to offer something that is AI, whether it's real or hype. They will describe that they're offering AI, and so in those cases, the referral method would be self-selection. It could also be that another campus department or unit with whom we work learns about this utilization and suggests that the unit goes through the risk assessment process with us. It could also be that a tool is developed in-house, and similarly, those same referral methods would apply. And then I think the last means, which has been the bulk of the use cases we've received so far, they are identified because there's a new procurement that involves a tool that is a fully AI tool, or it's a tool that just has AI embedded in some way. And it may be that the procurement office, the information security office, or the privacy office suggest that we provide that guidance. You'll see here on the right, there's a screenshot of the supply chain management webpage. This is for individuals who are making a procurement of software and cloudware, and they see these steps on their website regarding the review process. So this is sort of where CERC-AIR fits in. When a procurement, for example, is going through the security review process, if it is a P3 or P4 level, if the tool uses P3 or P4 level data, the Information Security Office's assessments team does a review. And in the course of that review, although there are some questions related to AI, the assessments team has thankfully been referring some of those applications to us as well. So it's highly collaborative, and we are working to streamline the collection of information so that we are not asking requesters the same questions, and we are sharing the data from our reports across privacy, security, and accessibility, and now AI risk. But that's a little bit of sense of, what the landscape looks like if you're going through this process as a result of engaging in procurement. So we talked about this briefly already, so I'll just go quickly through this slide. But once in step 1, the requester submits an AI risk screening questionnaire, they either go off to the left and the step 2A, so the risk is low and the requester can proceed, or if the risk is not low, or we need more information to really understand the risk better, where you see step 2-2, the requester is asked to submit the full AI risk assessment, and either the risk is not low and the requester adopts risk mitigation suggestions to reduce risk and they can proceed, or the risk is not low and the requester accepts the risk without implementation of the mitigation suggestions, or perhaps sort of a marriage of some of the suggestions, but not all. And then CERC-AIR documents that unit is accepting the risk. We are also developing our collaboration with Campus Risk Services. So we'll be working more with them to refine this element of the process. And also are eager to hear your feedback as we get to the end of the presentation. handling our pipeline. So at the moment, we have only just begun socializing that CERC-AIR exists and receiving applications. Often thus far, we've found that applications are often submitted with some incomplete information, or even that we actually reach out to the applicant to help them complete the application. And there's there's a process of communication to even generate the content for the committee to review, that we hope will be a little bit more efficient in the future as folks become aware of CERC-AIR's availability and offer of support. But we also, because we're testing our tools, we need to divide up the requests that come in so that we can expedite the review. And so at the moment, we have divided our committee into subgroups. So from that large list of campus experts you saw earlier who are members of the committee, we have them deployed or deputized, I guess, to these mini subgroups. So we have a group looking at chatbots, conversational AI tools, more like Bear GPT or Chat GPT, productivity tools. And I think we are likely to, in the future, develop some other subcommittees that are more focused on teaching and assessment related tools and tools that automate decision making. So we're not only looking at generative AI. This subgroup is about AI risk as a whole. All right. And now I was hoping we could shift to a bit of a discussion. I would love to understand from members of the AI community how CERC-AIR can make this process approachable and seem less onerous for requesters. Also, what artifacts on our website would be most helpful? We recognize that some folks may benefit from seeing suggestions around risk mitigation, perhaps according to these various areas, before they even go through the whole process, because it may help them even in their initial conversations with a vendor, for example, or if they're developing something in-house in their plan for how to design the tool. So I see that there's some questions in the chat, and I don't think I paused very much to allow my colleague Sharon to interject. So I open it up to all, Sharon, and also members of the audience who have questions.
Well, it looks like, thanks, Jenny. That was a great presentation. I don't have anything to add, and am also, like you, eager to hear questions. And we have one from Tom in the chat. Is this a months-long process or a weeks-long process? What's the timeline from submission to completion?
That's a great question. Thank you, Tom. So at the moment, the applications we have received thus far have not followed a standard review timeline. It's certainly not what we expect. We are in the first couple of months of the committee's existence. So we are defining exactly what our processes are. But our intent, especially now that we have developed these subgroups, is that while the committee meets every 2 weeks, the subgroups meet in between. And what the subgroups do is that they determine what the content of a report should be, and they make a preliminary recommendation to our whole committee. And then that committee as a whole sort of ratifies the report, and that is then shared out. So what we would like to get to is a 2-week timeline for turnaround.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I can add that, like with any review process, if the materials that the requester submits are complete, the review is a lot faster. And this is going to be a learning process for everybody, which is why I think Jenny was asking the question about what artifacts on the website would be most helpful to assist people in submitting the kinds of requests that are have enough information for the committee to expeditiously review them. Could the review process be implemented using AI?
That's a good question. I think that actually it may be that some parts of the refining and editing of text and some of the research may use AI. I don't know if the whole review process could be implemented using AI at this point. We'd have to review that. Right. I see that Tom has a question. Could we combine the accessibility, information security, and AI review into a single form for process efficiency? Tom, that is my greatest dream. That would be absolutely fantastic. I love that idea. We have discussed it. The Information Security Office has a vendor contract because they have, in addition to their staff, they have a vendor who helps them with the security assessments. And that contract is going to be under review in the fairly near future. We are thinking that at that time, it may be possible for us to combine some of these reviews as we explore whether to renew or go with a different vendor. But even in the interim between now and then, we are looking to combine, in particular, privacy and AI risk review as much as we can. And in those other areas of review, we are coordinating and meeting regularly to ensure that we're not duplicating information. We have shared access to one another's assessment folders and so forth. And these processes can occur simultaneously. They do not need to occur, sequentially. So I am in agreement with your idea about combining them as best we can. And that is absolutely something we're looking to do. We do need funding for it as well. To support a tool that would allow that collaboration. So we'll see, but we are absolutely on board with that sort of mentality.
That's right. And as sort of to try to reduce the delay that can come with sequential and potentially duplicative reviews, on CERC-AIR are also people who participate or have expertise in the other review processes. So we can cross-pollinate and they can spot something that might be coming to them later and make sure that it is reviewed at the same time. Oh wow, lots of questions in the chat. Let's see.
I can help you
Thank you.
with these. Laura Tamborelli writes, outside of procurements, what necessitates a review?
That's a good question, Laura. So to be clear, there is no requirement for engagement with CERC-AIR at this time. So there's nothing that technically necessitates a review, but we have suggested that our services are available if a unit seeks to utilize AI in any of the scenarios listed on this slide. So if the tool is if the AI tool is already procured, but you want to enable the AI within that tool, or you want to use AI in a totally different and new use case, if there is AI developed in-house, that's another, scenario when we could do the review. Now, we aren't for sure going to have the capacity to review every single new implementation of AI on our campus, nor do we want to. This is just examples of the scenarios that could lead to a unit saying, okay, I'm going to take the screening. And the screening simply identifies then, okay, well, which of these are low risk? And you're going to go forth with just looking at the resources on our website about risk mitigation. And which of these are high risk or they're unique new use cases that are novel? We don't really know exactly what the best risk mitigations are yet. And so we'll do further review. I hope that answers the question. Sharon, do you want to add anything?
No, that was a complete answer.
Okay.
There's a follow-up here. Actually, Bill, Allison put this in the chat, and you were just talking a little bit about this, Jenny. Can you talk about the distinction between reviewing a tool and reviewing a use case and how CERC-AIR thinks about this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So whether it's a tool or a use case, the form and materials that we collect information in are the same. I think that the use is really what is, one of the things that's most important. A tool may be appropriate and low risk in one use case, but actually much higher risk in another use case. And so I think it's the use case that's the most important, and that's part of why there's no distinction in our forms. This could evolve, but that's sort of my sense at the moment. I also noticed that Jake Harwood, one of our CERC-AIR members, is also here at the moment, and there may be others who I simply don't see yet. So if Jake, you or others on CERC-AIR would like to interject, please feel free to do so. It'd be great to have the conversation enriched with your participation.
There's a question here. Could you provide redacted examples of what a good or complete application looks like? And then a follow-up question from Sarah Bushman, similar question. What documents or items do you need for us, for a review? Can you talk a little bit about some examples or share some right now or speak to that question?
Yes, that's great. So I think the idea of sharing some redacted examples is a really good one. I'm actually going to note that down. We were also thinking about sharing some sort of redacted reports, so folks can see those as well, and putting on our website some more detail on what is in the pipeline at the moment, so that folks have a sense of whether the kinds of tools they're interested in may have already been reviewed. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question, Kara?
Just, similar question, just what are the documents or items we need, what you need from us for review?
Right. So what we need will depend somewhat on the particular case that we're reviewing. The most important thing is that, as you can see on this slide, we ask that we ask that that requesters complete the AI risk screening. That's a Google form. And then following their completion of the screening, the full AI risk assessment, that's also a Google form. Those are the two things that we ask sort of foundationally. But then there may be additional documents that we seek, or we compare and share with our partners like Information Security Office and their report from their vendor Venminder. So I hope that's helpful, but it does depend a little bit on the use case. Certainly, some of the information we collect in the risk assessment includes things like, what is the name of the vendor's company? What is the give us the website for their tool, things like that. So we would do some further research depending on what we were looking at in the application.
Sounds great. This is a follow-up to that. And I think maybe you mentioned this, Jenny, earlier, a question from Saba. Could we do the risk assessment ourselves for some tools, or do we have to submit a review request with CERC for every AI that pops in the softwares that we're using? It sounds like you mentioned that form that they fill out kind of gives them an initial hit on. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. I strongly encourage folks to go through the form and review. Within the form itself, there is lots of information about, have you considered all of these risk mitigation strategies? And the form is responsive. So, it will ask you, well, is X the case? Okay, if X is the case, then here are all the risk mitigation strategies we are like preloaded suggesting for you to consider. It would be helpful, even if you haven't yet heard back from CERC-AIR, to really review those possibilities carefully. Now, I don't think it's a complete substitute for engaging with CERC-AIR. If CERC-AIR says, this is a novel, like we need more information to really provide our review, you're not just getting review from Sharon and I, or even Sharon and I and Jake. You're getting review from faculty at Cal who are some of the top AI researchers and policy experts in their fields anywhere. And so it's a very valuable process of review to have the copyright attorneys. I mean, we have a lot of folks on the committee with very different and complementary expertise. So it's definitely better than nothing to start with looking carefully at the risk mitigation strategies in the form. But I wouldn't stop there, especially if you find that it seems to be not low risk.
There's a question from John in the chat. Is there any discussion about creating a repository of the AI tools that have been reviewed already and their risk score or recommendation?
That is an excellent question. And yes, there's absolutely talk of that. I think we would probably put it behind authentication because it's not something we probably want to share with the vendors. But that is something we've been discussing. And Jake, I would love to hear your response to this question.
Just when we do vendor assessments on the ISO, one of the things that we notice is, and we've already touched on it here, just because a vendor has been assessed in a certain way, that doesn't mean your use case is exactly the same as the others. So, I'm using, P1 data and the other use case is P4 data. That's a very different sort of risk calculation. So I think it's very useful to have that stuff put out there, but we also have to have the mapping to the appropriate use cases. And I think all of that can be presented behind some reasonable amount of CAS authentication or something like that. So just a footnote on that.
Yes, thank you, Jake, for adding that. That's really important. Just because something was approved for one use case does not mean it's necessarily appropriate for any use case. The tools themselves are also changing quite often. They're getting bought and sold, their terms of use are changing. And so I think that sort of when in doubt, just go through the process and apply. The form is not that long. We were very careful to try and limit what we collect to just the most essential areas of risk. So give it a shot.
I think Tom had another question in the chat, and Tom, I want to invite you to come off mute because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to convey it.
Oh, sure.
correctly.
Yeah, there I am. So I guess the question is about hard stops. So like, are there some things that we should be looking out for in an AI tool that are just like, hey, this stops. The minute we see this goes no further, we are done here. Because that I think would be very useful in our initial even conversations with vendors. It's like, if you don't meet X, then I don't do another demo with you. I don't bring in stakeholders. I don't get all of the process that I build up before I generally get to review a tool. Would be great to know.
Yeah, that's a really good suggestion. I think that perhaps a table that suggests, these are common characteristics of things that are at the highest level of risk would be a valuable resource that we could share on our website. I hesitate to sort of just spout out things right now, but I will say that like one thing that, for example, stopped UC's rollout of OpenAI, of ChatGPT, and stalled our OpenAI contract was data offshoring. They made a change that they informed us about to their data offshoring policy, and that was not acceptable to the UC. And so we had a pause on that contract. And eventually it was negotiated and actually is resolved. But, there is strength in the system working together to flag risks. I think that it would be a good idea to create something like what you're saying, Tom, that shows a sort of graduated, like, these are the highest level risks, that if you see this is a flag that tells you, ooh, not necessarily don't proceed at all, but this really requires further review. I think things related to privacy and monitoring are also major concerns. Testing related to bias, anything that is doing automated decision making, not just generative AI, but it's actually making a decision in lieu of a human on a subject of high consequence, whether it's security, assessment, hiring, et cetera. Those are the things that we want to review the most closely.
Thank you. That actually would be very helpful. I appreciate that.
Kara, I'm continuing down through the chat, and I'm looking at the question from Danielle. Oh, sorry, Daniel. Did I miss any from above?
I think we've covered
These
most
are
of them,
comments. Okay.
and yeah, and folks can feel free to come off chat and ask their question if we haven't. But yeah, I think Daniel's comment is the last chat we have here.
Great. Okay, in light of some suggestions we've heard from Cal leadership, it would be reassuring to me to know if CERC-AIR reviews follow the famous principle of a computer can never be held accountable, therefore. Yes, that is not embodied within our governance documents, but I think that is in spirit a value that is held. Yeah, we do have in the UC-AI principles, one of our values that I will point to in this slide around accountability. Humans are ultimately responsible for the tools that they use and for the decisions that are made, and further, institutions are ultimately responsible. And that is exactly why CERC-AIR review is so important. There is major risk ethically and in terms of litigation for decisions that are made. We can't just say, oh, whoops, sorry, our tool decided to be discriminatory. Sorry, that doesn't work. We're responsible. So that's why we have this process. Yes, I totally agree with you, Bill. That transparency is really important. And one of the tools we were thinking about developing for sharing on our website would be a listing of some of the terms of use of tools that we have advised on. So, for example, Bear GPT, the users, the units responsible for developing the Bear GPT pilot, to their credit, asked for our engagement in reviewing the terms of use that they share with users, and those terms of use are very clear about what is involved and what's happening with the data. And we would encourage others to do that, so we can just be helpful in making sure things are transparent.
Thanks for giving that example. That Bear GPT is actually one of the tools that you have considered in your committee. Would it be possible to give maybe a couple other examples of things that are in the pipeline or that you've considered, so that to give folks an idea of what you've been working on and maybe what they can bring to you, big or small?
I think I'll share them a little bit, but not with too much detail, only because we haven't really gotten permission from those units to do so yet. And we don't know the outcome of all of the committee reviews. So I will share that Berkeley IT, for example, as many of you folks may know, is trying to bring forth a number of productivity tools for which there's great interest on the campus. Zoom AI, for example, which is in pilot, available to administrators, but not yet to students. That's one tool. Google Gemini. Sorry, I'm just blanking for it. Sharon, feel free to step in. I thought you were coming off mute for a moment.
Oh, yeah, I mean, those are two. And then I would say a number of units are developing chatbots of one kind or another. And each one is a different situation because the kind of information that might be entered into it would be different. And the people using it would be different. And so each of them is getting its own independent review.
Thank you. And my colleague just very kindly reminded me of, as I was getting tongue-tied. So the productivity tools that we're considering are the Gemini app, Google Notebook LM, and Gemini Premium, the paid version. So the high-level service tier. Those are some examples in addition to what Sharon shared regarding chatbots. And then there's also some tools that are related to automated decision making. I'm not going to name those in particular, but they are intended to make processes more efficient.
Thank you. Carrie chatted. It sounded like you were referencing that this committee review might become required in the future. Do you have a sense of when, if ever, that may happen? And Tom followed up with that. And if required, could it be staffed by dedicated full-time employees? I mean, that raises, to my mind, that a lot of these AI initiatives on our campus are staffed by folks with full-time jobs who may or may not have AI in their job title, who are or volunteers who are doing the committee work. Tell me more about kind of the long-term vision of how this may fit into AI strategy, or if it will be required, and your thoughts on any of that.
I think I'm going to defer to Sharon in answering this question as a deputy risk officer for campus and also PAC AI member.
Yeah, I think right now our short-term goal is a proof of concept. Can this committee deliver reviews that are useful, informative, help people make really good decisions about managing their own risks? But I think there's also going to come a time when the campus has to decide on its own risk appetite. Some of the risks we're talking about are risks to the users of the tool. Some of them are risks to the campus. Most of them are probably both. And the campus has a spectrum of reviews. There are reviews like human subjects review, the IRB, which is obligatory. And if you don't pass it, you cannot go forward with your research, or you can't publish it if you do. That's at one end. And other reviews like privacy reviews are technically advisory, but most people really, really want that advice and follow it. So it's not strictly obligatory, but it has proved so useful that it is effectively always followed. And so I think it remains to be seen where this review will fall. It has to prove effective and useful. We have to decide what the campus's overall position is. And by we, I don't mean we on the committee, but the campus as a whole, senior leadership has to decide its risk appetite and how strictly it wants to put controls in place. So I don't think we're going to make that decision, but we are going to develop a service that, other people will decide how useful it is and whether we can afford to do it so rigorously that it could ever become obligatory. So these are all great questions. Too early to tell is the short answer. I hope that's helpful. But I think that's one of the things that PAC AI was formed in order to discuss. Like, what is the campus's governance structure, if any, going to be around AI? What should it be?
Thank you, Sharon. And feel free to come off mute if you have a follow-up question.
I wonder, Carrie, since you are in the IRB office, whether you might share from your experience some features of that process that have been designed to make it more smooth for faculty. I understand, of course, that they are required to do it. It's not the same as the CERC-AIR process, but I imagine that you have a very well-refined process at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the devil's in the details, and it's always a case-by-case basis. But yeah, we often have to warn researchers about ancillary review, including procurement and vendor assessment, ISO, research data management. So yeah, just kind of keeping an eye on this and using it as another tool to refer researchers to will be definitely helpful. I think it would be a larger discussion in terms of how to make the process simpler. I mean, we have a lot of data on our website. So I'd say putting a lot on your website, even if people don't always find it themselves, being able to link it to them when they reach out with questions is always helpful. So, but if you want to, make a meeting between our two offices, I think that could be helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. We did already actually reach out to the interim director of OPHS.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And because I remember serving on CPHS and
yes,
being
your
so
name
impressed with the
sounded familiar.
yeah, with the efficiency of the process and the regularity and rigor of it. And so we are interested in learning from your office about how to
Sure.
stand up a process like this to really work well for users.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carrie. Well, Jenny, you submitted a couple poll questions that you wanted to launch to folks just to kind of ask them about their feelings about how likely they are to seek guidance or whether they would seek guidance. Do you want me to launch those poll questions now for folks?
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Kara.
All right, you should see those polls popped up on your screen.
Oh, sorry, Kara. The questions were the second question
it was
is
like
the only
before
one
and
that's
after.
intended. It was like a before and after. Yeah, but this is totally fine. And thank you for gathering this information.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same question. So you can just answer the same thing for each one, or maybe you can answer as if you were coming into the presentation not knowing anything, and then now that what you've learned, how likely you are to seek guidance. Give you another minute here.
This is a very helpful temperature check for us. So I really appreciate folks answering with candor. The fact that some feel like unlikely to engage in the process, it's still good information to see. And it makes me want to explore further, okay, so we have to continue to socialize this and gain information to unpack why that is and what we can do to make it more accessible. I think perhaps even as a follow-up to this presentation, we might send out a poll to understand what is making people most likely who attended to seek this, to involve themselves in this process, and what's leading them to say that it would still be unlikely. So thank you for the temperature check. It's really helpful.
So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll right now. I'm assuming everyone who has seen it has answered. So I'm going to share those results, and maybe we can just kind of look at the second one, given what you've learned in this presentation. How likely would you be to seek guidance from CERC-AIR? And 55% of you say very likely, 40% of you say somewhat likely, 4% say unlikely. So I'd say those are pretty good numbers there. Do you have thoughts on that, Sharon or Jenny, or other people who maybe weren't able to answer the poll and have thoughts? They can come off mute and share.
Well, I'm thrilled by that, and I think the committee will take this as inspirational. Given this, pre-existing interest, the committee really will want to do a great job at delivering useful, actionable feedback to requesters in a timely manner. And Jenny, it might be worth mentioning that CERC-AIR will probably be in a recruitment phase for some time. And so people who might be interested in serving could reach out so that when we have someone rotate off or if we need to expand, we know who to go to.
Yes, that's a great point, Sharon. Thank you.
Mhm.
And we do have a minute or two left, and there's a flurry in the chat. A question posed by Annika. Has any Gen AI tool been approved by CERC-AIR for P4 data? Rumor has it that other UCs are approved campus-wide to use Google Gemini to build agents that handle and analyze P4 data. And a little bit of chat here. Bill mentioned that there are P4 options available via AWS and Google Vertex. Google Workspace is P3. And he mentioned, I do not think there have been reviews though. Could you offer any color on that or additional information?
Yes, I can. So what Bill said is correct. And I would add that to answer very specifically on what CERC-AIR has approved or recommended, we have not yet received an application for a P4 AI tool or an AI tool using P4 data. But we would not be the ones to make the determination alone regarding what level of data protection was appropriate for the tool. That's something that our colleagues in the security office would do, and we would really provide guidance regarding how to mitigate the risk. Jake, would you like to add anything to that?
Just that there's different, on-prem versus outsourced to cloud providers and things like that. And so any P4 application should be following the minimum security standards for electronic information. And part of that is submitting a security plan to be reviewed by our assessments team. And so if we saw something in there with a large amount of AI that looked overly complex, rather than just some of the light advertising that vendors are putting on everything today. So there's a note there. We would probably kick it up to CERT to review that and help us with that process. We have a few light questions for things that are part of our vendor review process, but nothing is built out as we've got on the CERC-AIR side. And so we're looking at those, and depending on the application and where it's going and what the data is being used for, we would find it in that review process and then engage the customers first to get the full understanding. And then if we felt that our vendor assessment wasn't going to be meeting the level of risk that it might be posing, we would then bring it up to CERC-AIR to get some guidance on that from a campus perspective.
Thank you, Jake. I also just wanted to share in this slide that the allowable use levels for some of the existing AI tools available on campus. Although, of course, these are always growing. And so I suggest that you take a look at the Berkeley IT page on AI tools that are licensed by UC Berkeley for a complete and updated listing. I'll pull that up in a moment and share that as well.
Well, we are nearing the top of the hour or the end of the hour. And I really appreciate Jenny, Sharon, and then Jake as well for chiming in about your work with CERC-AIR, letting us know how we can get access to the service, information about its genesis, and a little bit about potentially its future. So if there's anything else you want to share, I leave it open to you. Otherwise, anyone in here can reach out to Jenny, Sharon. We've put tons of information in the chat. You can look at the CERC-AIR website to access that Google form and an email to reach out to the committee. So thank you so much for being here, and have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you, Sharon and Jenny.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.